For most of human history, there was no such thing as a 9-to-5 job. So what did people actually do with their entire day? In the 1960s, a group of anthropologists set out to study one of the last hunter-gatherer societies left on Earth, the Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert. They expected to find people living on the edge of starvation, spending nearly every waking hour searching for food just to survive. What they found instead would completely change how we think about work and about ourselves. Anthropologist Richard Lee tracked exactly how the Bushmen spent their time, day by day, for weeks at a time. The result? Adults spent only 15 to 20 hours a week finding food, less than half of a standard work week today. And it wasn't just the Kalahari. Researchers studying Aboriginal groups in Arnhem Land, Australia, found strikingly similar numbers. Two unrelated hunter-gatherer societies on two different continents, both working a fraction of a modern work week. Anthropologist Marshall Sahlins looked at this data and coined a phrase that still gets debated today: the original affluent society. His argument was simple. There are two ways to become wealthy: produce a lot or want very little. Hunter-gatherers, he argued, had taken the second path, not because they had more, but because they needed less. So what did they do with all those extra hours? Mostly, they rested. Early observers of hunter-gatherer camps described long stretches of the day spent talking, napping, and doing nothing in particular. They told stories, passed down knowledge, and maintained relationships that would matter enormously when times got hard. Some of that free time went into art. The cave paintings at Lascaux in France are around 17,000 years old, made by people with no obligation to produce them. But here's the twist that turned this into one of anthropology's biggest debates. Critics pointed out that Lee's count only included the act of hunting and gathering itself. It left out the time spent collecting firewood, preparing food, making tools, and caring for children. When later researchers added all of that back in, the real number came out closer to 44 hours a week for men and 40 for women. So maybe hunter-gatherers weren't working less. Maybe they were just working differently, without a boss, a clock, or a commute. Whatever the true number, one thing is hard to dispute. Their bodies tell a different story than we might expect. Skeletal remains show many hunter-gatherers were taller and stronger, with fewer signs of disease than the farmers who came right after them. Some estimates put the height gap at several centimeters, a difference that took thousands of years to close. That's because around 12,000 years ago, agriculture began to spread outward from a region known as the Fertile Crescent. Farming produced far more food per acre, which meant more people could live in one place. But it came at a cost. Biologist Jared Diamond famously called the switch to agriculture, quote, the worst mistake in the history of the human race. Diets became less varied, labor became constant instead of occasional, and disease spread faster once people started living closer together. As villages grew into towns, something else changed. Some people stopped working the land entirely. Chiefs, priests, and warriors began living off the surplus everyone else produced. A leisure class was born. Just not for most people. None of this means hunter-gatherer life was easy. Child mortality was high, and food could run short in a bad season. Even Sahlins' critics agree on this much. The sharp line we draw today between work and free time barely existed before agriculture. So the next time your job feels endless, remember this. For the vast majority of human history, the 9-to-5 simply didn't exist. Subscribe for more stories history class never told you. Sahlins laid out this argument in his 1972 book, Stone Age Economics, which is still assigned in anthropology courses today. For comparison, the average full-time worker today logs somewhere between 40 and 50 hours a week, and that's before counting the commute. The Bushman's diet leaned heavily on a single food source, the mungongo nut, so abundant and reliable that starvation was rarely a serious threat. Bioarchaeologists have also found a spike in tooth decay right around the shift to farming, largely thanks to grain-heavy diets. Some researchers even argue early farmers had shorter life expectancies on average than the hunter-gatherers who came before them. To be fair, farming did make one thing possible that foraging never could: supporting far larger populations on the same amount of land. A hunting and gathering lifestyle can support roughly one person per square mile. Farming can support hundreds. So agriculture wasn't purely a mistake. It was a trade-off. Less individual freedom and health, in exchange for a civilization that could eventually support billions. That same trade-off, more people, more hierarchy, more work, is arguably still playing out today. Every meeting you sit through, every email you answer after hours, traces back to a decision made 12,000 years ago to stay in one place and plant seeds. Even the researchers who pushed back on Sahlins don't fully dismiss him. Most agree hunter-gatherers had more autonomy over their own time, even if the total hours were similar. It wasn't necessarily about working fewer hours. It was about nobody telling you when, where, or how those hours had to happen. No shift schedule, no performance review, no inbox waiting when you woke up. Anthropologists are still debating the exact numbers today, more than 50 years after Sahlins first published his theory. What nobody debates is this. The 8-hour workday, the 5-day week, the whole structure we treat as natural, is a remarkably recent invention. It's not human nature, it's a few thousand years of habit.